Welcome, everyone. We're back again for another exciting episode of Cloud Dialogues. Today, we're talking about cloud strategy, and cloud strategy is a very, interesting topic, as we'll find out. It covers a lot of dimensions. And to help us talk about it, we have Michael Ewald, a kind of well known technology leader in the industry. Welcome, Mike, to the show.
Yay!
Yay.
We're so
Thank you.
lucky to have Michael with us to talk. And I'm so grateful because obviously cloud strategy is my game. So having someone to help me talk about this is great. And hopefully take a little bit of I feel a lot of pressure on this topic because it's my topic. So thank you, Michael.
How about we start off with a little bit of intro, Michael, about you and where your career has taken you up until.
Yeah, happy to share that, Matt. Thank you very much. I won't go right into the bowels of my history. I'll sort of circumvent a little bit to where it becomes relevant. But I did start as a software engineer and rose up through before DevOps was a thing. I was so sick of trying to work out how to do deployments without things breaking and just started automating everything. And then I found out, they got a name for this. It's called DevOps. But what that led me on to is becoming a bit of an expert in that field and really handling very large scale environments, and becoming a consultant where I ultimately then went into a bank. So I can talk about it because I'm not there anymore, but CBA. So, so I've got a mixture of consulting background and customer background. So to give you an idea why I feel confident talking around cloud strategy and some of the complexities around that is during my time at CBA, I was actually head of operations for the bank's entire data platform, like 80% of the bank's data, like data lakes, data warehouse, machine learning instances, visualization. And at that same time, we're on our own cloud strategy as well and moving to cloud. And then after that, I joined Contino, where I was essentially the CTO of Contino, which we were a cloud native digital agency, where again, going into lots of organizations. And that was our primary focus around helping customers go to cloud. And it was always the conversation around not why cloud, but how cloud, which is a big differentiator. So obviously I had exposure to lots of different organizations on their cloud journey, advising some customers. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't, but you always get to see the result, right? So it's that continual toolkit. And in my current role where I am at the moment, doing very much the same. So that's a bit about my background. And I think I've seen enough cloud. We're talking about strategy, right? But it's not just the strategy. You have to look at execution because there's many different ways to look at strategy. And then you find out whether you're right or wrong when you come to execution.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for the intro. Let's start off with an easy one. Maybe it's easy, maybe it's not. What is actually a cloud strategy, and why is it important? Like,
Yeah.
is there a rule book?
It's let me start the easy part of that question. No, there's no rule book. There is none.
No,
I've
it's an important point. Like there's obviously no kind of agreed way to do this or there's no agreed scope to cloud strategy. Like what is cloud strategy? I know I have an opinion as a cloud strategy consultant, but I would say that I would disagree with a lot of people that, talk about cloud strategy as to what it is.
Yeah. When I'm executing cloud strategy, I want to understand the business,
Totally.
and if you're not underpinning your technology, and cloud's just one part of that strategy where the business is going, it's very hard to be successful. And my experience is that there are certain methodologies of that, and I think
Yeah.
even in the cloud space, like you look at the amount of books, the amount of publications, the amount of people that like project to product, like
Yeah.
all those famous
Yeah.
ones where they're and you read it, you go, this makes so much sense. Why doesn't this happen in execution? Why is it still so hard? Why it's only literally like less than the 1%ers that get that right? It's because
Absolutely.
you can't take what happens. I always remember when the Jez Hubble, continuous handbook, it's the Bible of DevOps when it came out, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
right, we're going to do this. We're going to go. And then
And nobody
iterations
has it.
later,
Yeah.
no. And Google released SRE and say, yeah, we're all going to do SRE and
No,
we're going to
but
do what they say.
this
It doesn't
is
work. Yeah.
this is exactly right, is that it has to be fit for purpose, right? Like when I talk to like, public sector or whatever, like we're just going to move some things to cloud. They're like, we need to do DevSecOps or what? I'm like, why? Like we use
Yeah.
full stack development. Why? Like, what is your actual business need? Because it's one thing for
Exactly.
Amazon to go and do that, right? It's one
Yeah.
thing for Amazon with their limitless resources. Obviously, cloud scales infinitely, right?
Yeah.
But for most businesses, it's just not a reality and it's not necessary either.
Yeah. And this is where I fully agree with you. Like, why are you doing this? And going back to the original question, like, what is cloud strategy? It's what is your plan to use cloud? And then, but that's not the real question. It's like, why? Like, what are you
A
trying to do?
hundred
Going to cloud?
percent.
Because
What are you
everyone
trying
else
to
is.
unlock by going
What's
to
the
cloud?
point? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why when I
Is it?
see
Yeah.
like mass migration programs, I'm a bit like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, like whenever I see that, oh, 2 or 3 thousand migrations, I'm like, what's your actual business rationale for doing that?
That's a topic on its own, and I hope this becomes a question because I do have some opinions on this, and I used to be the opinion with thinking like, actually, you know what, I can. There's only one valid reason I can think of for lift and shift, and then because I started thinking,
I
well, you're in the
agree.
cloud and you're starting to use you're there and you're starting to like use those skill sets and the tooling available for that, but you've from my experience, it's all about the money and budget. You don't
Yeah.
get too many opportunities to be given budget to do things, and it costs you so much more with the lift and shift when you look at the total cost of change and run over the 5-year journey. This is not like a project initiative. You're on a multi-year journey where you've
Mm,
lifted it, and now you can't get away. Ultimately, OpEx is the killer. Like in businesses, you got two levers. You increase your revenue, reduce your costs. And we've seen so many companies that will lift and shift, bill shock. And it's, oh crap, like now I've got to, like I've sold a business case and now I'm not delivering on a business case. I've got to ask for more money to do the refactoring. Do that from the start. Like
yeah.
the only
Or at least
compelling
have a
reason, yeah,
plan to do it, right? At least have a clear plan
yeah,
and to do, because I think, a lot of businesses migrate and they think, oh,
we'll
we'll
do that.
get to
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
modernize later. And it just never
yeah.
happens. And then,
So,
a few years
yeah,
later, they're billing up hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's like, what are you actually
yeah.
getting for this?
So pro tip to any executive leaders out there, thinking of this, there is no plan B. There is no second phase. Like you get one shot at it. So that's it. So the money will cease. It happens time and time again. So try to think about modernization, and maybe the answer is not moving everything to cloud, but picking
Mm,
these sort of items where you can actually use cloud native services,
where is it
reduce
going
your
to add
OpEx, and
business
it's possible.
value?
Yeah. Look, what's my service? Like if I've got something which is very transaction based and it's a user per pay, why aren't I looking at serverless where my cost
Mm,
model of cloud consumption matches my business model? Pick those particular ones, build a business case because like Mark Schwartz, excellent books. If you read some of those, like The Seat at the Table and War and Peace for IT, like those ones where he makes it very clear that yeah, IT, being the CIO is so tough. You've got the toughest job because whenever something is successful, business claims credit. When it goes wrong, they blame IT. You got a real tough job in IT. So you need to build successful cases where you can actually gain the credibility of the financial and the business holders who have ultimately have the money to give you the opportunity to have a second bite of the cherry and keep modernizing and actually, and it's not just the cost reduction as well. You got to be thinking around cost of change. I know we're going off topic, but these are some things that I see all the time and I'm very
no,
passionate about
no.
that people
I
get
think
frustrated about. Yeah. So
And
I think like it's,
FinOps is a core
yeah,
component, right? FinOps is something from my perspective, that's
yeah,
really essential part of cloud strategy is
yeah,
understanding where are you actually getting value in this journey as
yeah,
opposed to like how much is lift and shift going to cost. And
yeah,
I think that's often a part of cloud strategy that's kind of almost forgotten, but it should be
yeah.
there all the way through that process.
Yeah, and it's not just your running rate as well. It's cost to change. Like when you have
Totally.
a project, like every time you should be doing a project and you're modernizing either your deployment pipelines, your platform engineering guardrails, bringing like your like compliance and security costs down, like shifting left, you're actually reducing the money you need to make a change. So rather than having a big bang project and it's project tax where they've got to build all the infrastructure and all the pipeline out. It's kind of like strangler pattern. If you're putting some of those elements in over time, you actually got an opportunity to start to bring down the cost of each particular project run. And therefore you get more value for the dollar you spend. So there's two levers here for costs. And I know I keep coming back to cost and strategy, but you can have a great idea, but if you haven't got funding for it, it's not going anywhere.
And that's a good point
And
because,
value is key.
yeah,
Like, what are you actually getting for it? And then having
Yep.
at least having a like, coherent understanding of if we do X, Y, Z, what is
Yeah.
the value that we will actually return on that investment?
yeah,
Because lift and
Yeah.
shift is not, I feel like people get surprised when I say, like, like people talk about, specific use cases. They're like, we want to move this to cloud. And I'm like, why? Like, when I look at this, I think this is not a good use case for cloud, or like this doesn't make, and I
Yeah.
think people get surprised that I'm not just like, no, everything should move to cloud. It's like, no, that's not how we get the right value in the long term. We have to be, really thoughtful about this.
so I
Mm.
think I think we've agreed that we need to be aligned with the business strategy. What are you doing? Like, why is cloud
Yeah.
important? And also, the business case is obviously a key factor because that's what's going to fund this whole journey.
Yeah.
Well, not fund, but it's going to. Well, actually, yeah, the
Well, I mean,
outcome of the business case will help with
well, and
funding.
if you don't see the value in the short term, your transformation is going to fail. Like, ultimately, it's kind of self-fulfilling in that way, right? If you don't do the work up front to understand what value you're going to receive, the business is going to see that there is no value, and therefore people are not going to adopt cloud well, and you're not going to
Yeah.
use it well, and you're never going to see the value.
What's
So
Um,
that's a very interesting point because which I wanted to bring up is around when you talk about business, the business case and the business strategy, culture is a huge part of that. So a company needs to think about what type of engineering or technology team do they want to have? Do they want to be known as the leaders of technology, or they really just want to commoditize it? And this is really important because if you don't think about that, your path to cloud is going to be altered. And what I mean by that is if you want to be bleeding edge and you truly want to go serverless, or you want to have this thing where you want to build a high performing team. So obviously Kubernetes is like on your roadmap. You need to have some pretty good skill sets in house. So
mm,
it's one thing to hire people, but to retain them. So therefore you've got
mm,
to be having the right culture in place and the right environment to have the right technology team to deliver the outcomes that you want. Or else what's going to get stuck is you may have to just rely on partners all the time, which is could be counteractive to where you want to go. And that's the model as well. So some people, they want to go do the offshore model. The
mm,
offshore model, you're probably not going to have the leading edge technology frameworks and I'd say capability as if you built your own high performing team in house, right? So you've got to be thinking about those particular aspects as well, because that is going to actually determine like what type of cloud I'm going to use, what services I want to use, because again, these services change all the time, and you have to have a mindset of refactoring your code all the time to make
mm.
use of it. So again, like what type of engineering team do you want to think about? All these come into play for me when I'm talking to customers. One of the questions is like, what do you want to be known for? Are you going to remain a bank offering with technology services, or are you thinking yourself as a technology company that has banking services? Two different paradigms here, two different cultures you're going to build, two uses of cloud that you're going to end up with.
Yeah. Another area is around alignment from the leadership team, right? What sort of alignment do
Oh
you
yeah,
need to be successful? And have you got any
I
tips
feel like
here?
this is usually the first issue that you encounter when to like whether it was where I was Amazon or Accenture, talking to clients and being like, all of your executives are clearly not on the same page, and that's going to kill your transformation like from the beginning, right? Because
100%,
they all
100%.
they all think that different things are number one.
Yeah, 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 spot on. And it's a tough one with line because not everyone's on the journey, and believe it or not, even this day and age, not all leaders fully understand why we're why they're investing so much in technology, or where the direction is, and what the
Totally.
benefits are going to be. They have a rough idea. Some organizations have nailed it, but where you've got some key stakeholders where you need to engage, it is a tough journey. And let's be honest, like it's a lot easier for smaller organizations, but when you're enterprise, you are crossing different stakeholders. Like for instance, I'm going to cloud, and I want to build a platform engineering team because I want to centralize my guardrails. I'm a bank, therefore, hey, they just released CPS 230, huge focus on operational resilience. How am I going to control that? I've got these leaders on side, but all of a sudden, this particular business unit doesn't want to fund the money to adopt our cloud services, so they're going to spin off and do their own. So the having alignment is really important. That's going to derail your cloud strategy. You had this utopia idea that, hey, I'm going to have centralized function control where I can, like, our DevSecOps team can come in, my level 2 and 3 teams where like the open policy agent controls where they want to inject their controls in platform engineering. So I've got all the guardrails in place, but I've got this one business unit that refused to use it because they don't want to pay the money for it. So getting that alignment is another thing which you see derail all the time.
A lot of the time.
And I think,
Go on, sorry, go.
oh no, I was just going to say that, that, like, I know, and like one of the things Amazon, again, like disagree and commit, I feel like is one of the most important things that you can broker with your people as an executive leader. It's like, okay, well, can I go to my team and say, well, you don't agree, but can you just do what we're asking? We all agree. We understand you don't. Can you buy in? Can you give it 100%? And, try to work with the team here, because in the end, we can't be going in two different directions on this. We have to, we have to buy it. We have to make a call, right? Being able to do that with your people as an executive is just one of the most important skills. And this ties back to the why. That's so important.
And how people are measured.
Yeah,
And how people are measured helps, right? Because if you can measure, if someone knows they're being measured for a specific outcome, then they're going to do as much as possible to be able to do that. So that's why KPIs at that ship level
gets measured, gets managed.
Exactly right. And I'm surprised the number of organizations that don't, have trouble. It's because a lot of the time their incentives are not aligned to their strategy.
But also too, sometimes I think democracy is overrated. Like in these types of environment, you need a bit of a dictatorship. You need a strong leader
you need both. Yeah.
You need both. I
think
need the stick and the carrot.
It's a personal skill as well. Like, I remember one of my executives coming to me once, like someone very senior at Amazon, was like, I know you don't agree with this, but can you just do it anyway? And I was like, oh, 100%. I'm going to give it 100%, but I really don't agree. I don't think this is going to work.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, great.
Yeah.
So around we might cover, do you think choosing your hyperscaler partner is part of the strategy, or is it part of execution?
It's funny. No, I think it's part of strategy. So having the right partners in any capacity, right, is key to your success. Like as a company, if you had it all figured out, you would have done it by now. And it's a reason it's hard. So picking the right partner. So I think each hyperscale has different pros and cons. And it goes back to what type of outfit and technical team you want to be running. And also too, so what type of integrations you think that you're going to be going through. And also too, like how much are you going to buy versus build?
Yep, that's
got to assess your hyperscalers.
And that should be part of your strategy.
100%. So you got to weigh those up around the hyperscaler. God, I hope we get to multi-cloud, please. But
we're getting close.
Close. Yeah, good. But it's a key, Ren. You're thinking around what sort of organization, what's my business model look like? What are my business processes? What are my technology services to underpin that? What type of simplification? What type of optimization metrics do we need to achieve in that? What type of team do I need to achieve that? All these are inputs selecting what cloud is going to be right for you. And I hate to say it, but like all these hyperscalers give out different amounts of funding as well. And sometimes that's beneficial and sometimes that's prohibitive to
Sometimes
the
a
right
cloud,
outcome as well.
sometimes a cloud's the judgment of the cloud
It
decision.
it
Well, I
does, and
mean,
yeah,
it lift and shift, right? Like, oh, we're going to pay for, like, I believe there's some of that going on. Like, I'm not in the nuts and bolts of like contracting with hyperscalers, but like, oh, we're gonna pay for X, Y, Z over a number of years. But it's like if you lift and shift, however many applications, and it's like,
I've been
I,
involved in some of those, and some of them I could see, you know what? Okay, that's the right choice. And seen, I'm not going to name which one because I talked to all the hyperscalers, but what I was
same.
actually, yeah, it was not offensive, but it was a huge amount of money, and they flipped their decision, and it was totally the wrong choice for that organization. Like
Yeah,
just when like they built up a whole team and capability, the engineers on the ground, the engineering leaders on the ground were like, WTF, like, hey, like I'm preparing everything there and now we've got to flip. Like, it's totally not our skill sets. How are we going to deliver
wow,
on this?
And that costs,
So we're going to have
that
to build a
costs
team.
money.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That does cost a lot of money. Like, and think when you start losing, I mentioned before about there's one thing, hire engineering talent. To retain it is
mm,
another thing. Once you start
mm,
losing some top talent, it's those engineering leaders with vision and foresight that actually bring the team, that are actually going to deliver you the results. So we all work with these key individuals that they actually lift a project up and get momentum. You
raise
can't,
the
yeah,
standard, yeah.
you got to be thinking about that retention as well.
Yep.
And I think it like when we think about multi-cloud, for example, like I think a lot of organizations that are looking to move to the cloud automatically think that they need multiple clouds. And it's like going from no cloud to multi-cloud is that's a fairly big jump, right? That's a very big shift in just like even the way of thinking within an organization. And I think a lot of
Yeah,
organizations don't really think, do they actually need multi-cloud for what they're trying to achieve?
I put multi-cloud in the same bucket as Kubernetes. Like, why? Why?
Most of the
Why?
reason is
Do
why.
you understand what you're doing here? Yeah.
If there's a
Look,
compelling
yeah,
business reason, right? If there's a
yeah,
compelling
yeah,
business reason, but I always
yeah.
say, like when people say, "Can I need someone that can do AWS and Azure?" It's like, do you really though? Like, do you really need that? Why?
Yeah,
Um,
I truly question that. So yeah, yeah. I know I always throw that example of Kubernetes because I love a bit of a religious debate. I know anyone who loves Kubernetes right now is fuming at me for even mentioning that. But that's okay.
It's okay. Our
Yeah,
listeners don't use Kubernetes.
Kubernetes.
yeah.
So on that multi-cloud thing, right? What is your view there? When do you go multi-cloud and when do you not? Because there might be some situations.
Yeah, 100%. You do multi-cloud when you absolutely have to. When you have to.
Compelling
That's
business
it.
reasons.
There has to be a reason for this, right? For to do this. It is really, really hard to build high performing teams. Okay. Like why do you want to spread their skill sets across that? So in the consulting world, completely different. Like Matt, we've worked here before. Like, but I set a goal for people to be multi-cloud. Like, but that's different because you're going from customer to customer.
Mm,
Yeah, you got to understand and hit the ground running. But when you're building a high performing team and organization, one, you don't have the budget to hire the best and brightest. You got budget for maybe one or two. You have to build those teams. And it takes time to be an expert in those types of clouds and know the nuances and keep up to date with the literature. Like the surface is coming all the time. And you got to be invested in that because it's one thing to build it, but you got to keep optimizing it and refactoring that. And when a new service comes along, be able to pitch a business case around, hey, if we invest this money now, we can reduce our factor of like costs in the next sort of like 12 months by X amount, right? We're going to get like like serverless, perfect example, right? If you don't do serverless the right way, you're not going to get that much cost reductions. But if you architect it the right way, it's a huge cost saving. But knowing to do it the right way is really, really important. And then also too, what you're trying to do is you're trying to build your security posture. So gone are the days where you just have like an engineer. You need to be savvy around like your compliance and security posture in the cloud as well. So you can't just rely on the external security team to do this. So to have that across multiple clouds, it's really hard. Or the alternative is you got to hire a different team. And if you hire a different team, well then your costs go up. So I kind of feel multi-cloud. And look, and people will come back, like especially in the banking world, like APRA has these ideas around like, so these constraints where, you like if something goes wrong with that vendor,
Yeah.
that you need to have, that's not totally true, right? There's lots of different ways around.
It's
One is
more
around like,
complicated than
it's
that.
it's very
Yeah.
nuanced. You got to go back and
Yeah.
challenge on that. As you know, like it with different availability zones and regions now available in Australia, that argument is essentially gone. And this whole concept like, oh, we don't have vendor lock in. You're locked in. Like
Oh,
what
Michael,
is
don't get
your
me
Terraform
started
core
on
automatically? It's kind of, I remember when they were
don't
brought in
get
there,
me
but
started on
yeah,
vendor
yeah.
lock-in. The whole me and Matt talk about the vendor lock-in. We literally talk about it all the time. It's been like
Yeah.
I don't like the whole discussion just
So
frustrates me.
So I'm gonna show my age here a little bit. So they had this concept around object relational mapping, where you had an abstraction layer between like your business software code and the
Yeah.
database, and it's, oh, we're sold like, hey, we can actually abstract this database. If you want to change
There's
from
no
like
vendor
SQL to
lock.
Oracle,
Yeah.
So you go, yeah, you can just do it.
There's no vendor
When the
lock-in.
hell are you
Yeah.
ever going to do it? No one ever did this. When are you going to
No.
do this? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Same with the whole like container strategy for portability. What, dude, like, I'm just going to move my containers from one cloud to another. What about my database? What about
Yeah, no,
networking? Like,
exactly.
it's not as simple as that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's just, I think there are special, like with saying that, I make fun of it a little bit, but there are some use cases where, like, there are some particular services where it does make sense to have some items. But I think you got to be very clear around this, around the benefits, and then not just look at the cost to run cloud, but look at the op model that you need to construct,
Mm.
because headcount's really expensive as well. So you got to look at that as part of your decision matrix.
And that's part of the cloud strategy, right? Your organizational structure, how that's going to
Yeah,
look. And it'll be like any sort of, architectural thing where you'll have your current state and you'll have your interim state for your organizational structure.
yeah,
And
yes,
it'll sort of move in flux, right? As you gain more confidence in cloud. And just doing that multi-cloud thing would complicate that, among other things, right? All the other things you mentioned, security, skills, but it also, the organizational structure also becomes a little bit complicated
yeah,
because you have shared responsibilities between different people.
yeah. Oh, and compliance. Don't forget, like lots of these organizations, you'll have some type of regulatory body. When they make
Mm.
changes, what, I've got to then refactor my code across multiple cloud, multiple services. They're going to have different resource profiling. There's different IAM rules as well,
Mm.
how to structure that. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of reasons why that the simple line, every single line of code you write is a liability. So limit it. Yeah.
Yep. To close out, what are your top sort of three, I don't know, question without notice, your top three sort of tips for um, constructing a cloud strategy, or things you've seen that have worked in the past, do's or don'ts, anything can fit in
Mm.
that top three. What do you think um, around that?
Look, I think for me, it's you actually have to be, you have to understand the business strategy. You have to understand what their growth markets are, where they want to invest, and also to what are the market drivers for the organization, right? So is it something where like cost to change is really, really low, therefore, sorry, it's really, really high, so therefore I've got to optimize for that because we've got so much work coming in the pipeline. I don't think you can boil it down to three. I try to put it generically. Yeah,
Generic.
understanding the business strategy around. Yeah, it's going to be super high level because it, as we mentioned, we started off this conversation. There's no one playbook around like strategy. It really takes some time, and I think as well, my dues. It's actually not being afraid to reach out for help with the right, like reach out to your network, reach out to the right partner, someone who you trust is going to give you
Yep.
sound advice. Because this, I'm not saying this because I'm back in the consulting world, but like talking to the right people and getting it right in the right forums, you're going to hear the horror stories. You're going to hear the things of like things you may have not thought about
It's
to
so
ask as well.
true though. Like
Yep.
if you're a CFO and you're going through this, talk to other CFOs. Like I think that's one of the great things about like, some of the forums that the hyperscalers run is, you get connected with other
Yeah.
executives that have done this before and they have that experience. Um,
Yep.
yeah, and yeah,
Yeah.
so
I'm part of like a CTO group that we catch up once in a while, and we share the stories. Like
that's
people
great.
ask questions like, "Hey, who's
Yeah,
used this? Who's used this
amazing.
provider before? Who's used this technology before?" And people give you, "Watch out for this. I found this one better." You really need to think about that because it is so varied. Like your organization will be like no other organization, and you're not going to go from start to finish. I think you just said it, Matt.
Yeah.
It's a journey. And there's only so much you can do within the first 6 to 12 months. And then you're going to recalibrate. And then you have your North Star. And you never go in a straight line to your North Star. You're going to sort of like wave your way around getting to it because the world, your environment, the budget, leadership around you will change and ultimately alter what you can do within that potential fiscal year.
I think number 3 is what
I
we
do
just
always,
said
oh,
is those
sorry.
objectives. Know your initial objectives, what you want to achieve, and then iterate from there.
But I think cloud is an opportunity to kind of revisit that as well, to think, really deeply, how do we want to serve our customers? What is it that we want to
Yeah.
be known for?
Yeah.
Often executives are fundamentally disconnected on these things. And, cloud is an opportunity to go through that thought process.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
allows you to accelerate
Yeah. And,
your
I
objectives. Yeah.
spot on. And then with cloud, I kind of bundle in observability with that as well. It's a key part because without that, you don't know how you're going to measure the success of what you're doing. When I talk observability, I'm not talking this SRE observability, not just that, but customer success metrics as well. So again, feeding route and then around the performance of your teams, how your engineering teams are performing, that was talked about earlier, cost of change, what your security and compliance stance as well. So these are all, you can't just do cloud without that as well. So when we talk cloud strategy, it's one thing doing it, how are you going to prove it?
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, if you're in the IT team, you need to prove to the business that you got business benefits realization and build trust so that when you run out of money, which you will do, you can finish off the rest of your
Oh,
transformation.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for
totally.
joining us, Michael. It's been a fascinating discussion. And I hope our listeners took some tips. I think I got a few tips from you, as I do every time we talk. And I've seen you twice in 2 weeks now.
I feel like we've got enough stuff left for a part 2.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2 in a few weeks. How's that sound?
Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to
Seriously.
limit myself because I can tend to ramble. So
It's
I
so
was trying
hard
to
though,
limit it. Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
hard. Like, because in the end, like the way that I see what I do is it's about helping customers to think about how they want to use cloud and how they're going to balance operating model, cost, value management, tooling and
Yeah.
skill sets. All this, like, how do we balance all of that and find a
Spot
way
on.
of working that's going to enable us to get the value out of cloud for the things that we
Yeah.
want to achieve in business?
Yeah.
Really, like, that's in a nutshell. That's how I think about what I do.
Awesome.
Oh, 100%. And we didn't even touch operating model, which is
No.
a whole
No,
topic on its own.
operating,
Yeah.
well, with no op model, you're done, right? If you don't do the op model transformation,
Yeah.
it's already over before you started. So
Yeah.
Spot on.
Awesome. Thank you. And as usual,
thanks so much, Michael.
Thank you both. Yes.
Yep, thanks for coming. And thanks to our listeners and viewers on YouTube, depending on where you are. And please send us feedback, the usual channels,
Leave us
feedback
comments. Tell us what you want to hear about.
cloud-dialogues.com, and or comment on the YouTube channel if you want to make a nice comment. If you don't want to make a nice comment, don't comment. Thank you, and see you next time.